Hi, and welcome back to the First Time Homebuyers Podcast. I am one of your two co-hosts, Tom Sommers with Coldwell Banker in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. I am joined again, as always, by Eric McKenna, my co-host, who is with Remax Advanced in the Pittsburgh area. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. The Pirates are above 500. I'm good with that.
Hey, the Twins aren't going to be at a losing season the first time in 5 years, so I
There you go.
understand. I'm with you. And go Vikings this year.
Go
Anyways.
Vikings.
So,
Steelers.
well, that's a whole other thing. We'll talk about that some other
Yes,
time.
we will. Yes, we will.
Today, we want to talk about seller's disclosure. What are you looking for as a buyer in a seller's disclosure, and why are some of them the traditional seller's disclosure, and in Minnesota it's like 12 pages including radon information, or the seller's alternative disclosure, which is only 5 or 7 pages long. So Eric, why don't you get us started off?
Sure, and I want to mention that this was a question that from one of our podcast listeners, our loyal podcast listener, Linda. And to paraphrase, Linda basically said that she's in her process with her realtor, which she says she's not real happy about. So we're asking you to maybe reconsider someone and get a good realtor out there. She's also in Cincinnati, by the way. She mentioned the question was that she has seen multiple kinds of seller disclosures. Now, in Tommy's state, he mentioned there's 2 kinds. In Pennsylvania, there's only one, and you got to fill out this one in its entirety. So I'm not exactly sure what Linda's seen, but she mentioned that sometimes she sees them just crossed out and X'd out and really not even answered. And then she sees some that are very, very detailed. She's basically said it's a little bit intimidating, and she's just kind of been thrown the seller disclosure for each property she sees, and her agent's not really discussing it with her. So we're not going to go line by line, but what Tommy and I'd like to do is kind of explain what the heck a seller disclosure is right now and how that relates and how important it is to you as a buyer's agent and why it's important. You want to take it started out there, Tom?
Okay, well, I'm going to speak to the 2 different kinds we have here in the state of Minnesota. The one is the traditional seller's disclosure, and that is filled out by the majority of the folks who are selling the home. And essentially, it's, like I said, 12 pages long, and there's a lot of disclosures in there that don't require any answers. But there's everything from methamphetamine production to when did you purchase or build the home, to have you had any issues with a local government assessment company doing one thing or another. There's all these different things, and then also too, there's one page just literally dedicated to the furnace, the water running, the electrical system, all those things, to let you know essentially everything they can let you know that they know about the house. So if they don't have the previous seller's disclosure in their possession, that's not unlike norm in any way, shape, or form. But I want to say that this is what I say to my people when I'm listing a house is, look, there's nothing that's going to get you in trouble, but you got to disclose every single thing you can about the home because it will protect you from a legal standpoint. I really believe in the goodness of people. I don't think that their people are out there to deceive you as a buyer. I just think some of them, A, don't know any better, and B, if you have a listing agent who just drops it off at their house and says, fill it out, that's where the problem is, because a lot of folks don't know if they're getting any kind of a tax preferential treatment for Green Acre, whatever it might be. And it may sound like common sense, but in a lot of times it's not. And they don't understand how to fill it out. So when I go and list a house, we literally sit down and the sellers fill it out in front of me. We go line by line through everything. So more than likely, Linda, when you are seeing a half filled out seller's disclosure, it's because the listing agent's lazy and they're not helping the seller finish all of those answers. So it's not necessarily because they're trying to hide something. One other thing I want to say before you take over with this, Eric, is that it's important to note that when you're looking into different sections where they're talking about any leakage and seepage and cracks and all of these different things, that if they say to you in 2008, in the northwest corner of the basement, we had water come in after a heavy rain. We replaced the carpet, we graded the exterior, and we added gutters. Haven't had a problem since. Okay, now they've disclosed it. So if you now in the northwest corner have water 4 years from now, you cannot go back after that seller because they were honest with you and told you the truth. So there is a certain amount of risk that you take on once you see something like that in the disclosure.
Phenomenal. That's a great answer. And I will only add the following here. We only have one seller disclosure in the state of Pennsylvania for residential properties. It's about 9 pages. It's pretty detailed. It doesn't mention the methamphetamine production in the house or anything like
Well,
that.
apparently
But
there's a lot of it in the northern Minnesota.
okay,
There's not much
okay.
going on up there but drinking. So,
Well, fair enough. I will say that we have um, a very detailed seller disclosure, and ours is kind of a catch-all. You can use it for condominiums and townhomes. So there's certain areas that are not going to matter. You can also use it for some kind of agricultural properties because there's areas that you may not have to fill out. But like Tommy said, I am not a listing agent that would ever drop off a seller disclosure without instructions and let my sellers do it without me being there. I sit there, and while I'm not legally allowed to touch that disclosure, they've got to fill it out themselves.
absolutely. But we're there to
But
answer that question and let them know what it means.
oh, most definitely. And I'm there as a consultant explaining what maybe a certain question is. And I like the way that they're written in Pennsylvania, and a lot of agents don't. There's a little trick questions in there that'll ask kind of the same question twice, just trying.
Double negatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really there to vet out. And I can tell right away when I go to look at a seller disclosure on behalf of my buyer if the time was really taken to do it. I love when I see seller disclosures filled out with dates and events and they have a history of the property. It really speaks to the integrity. Knock on laminate here, but generally speaking, it speaks to the integrity of the seller, and I have a good feeling from my buyer, even if there has been water issues. And of course, water is always the big one, at least in my practice. Water is what we look for. And if there's been water issues, whether it's through the roof or through the basement walls, and there's been remediation, fancy word for fixing, and there's been trench drains, sometimes sump pumps, and they go in great detail, maybe even have receipts. As a listing agent, I'm a big believer in when I upload my seller disclosures to the MLS for everybody to see, I include a lot of supporting documentation, the waterproof company bills, and maybe a handwritten list of all the upgrades and the corrections in the property. The idea is we inform our sellers to be as detailed as they possibly can. Don't guess. If you don't know, it's good to mark unknown, especially on a date or something. But ultimately, the more information you provide to the buyer, yes, Mr. Seller, you're going to alleviate your potential liability, but you're also really helping the buyer make a great choice. And that will be a smoother transaction all the way to closing. Now, don't get me wrong. If I'm representing you, Mr. Buyer, and I see a well-filled out seller disclosure, there's still reasons why we need a home inspection because we want that home inspector to verify some of these things. Doesn't absolve us or absolve them from us doing our due diligence with our home inspector. But the seller disclosure should not be intimidating to you as the buyer because your agent, as your advocate, should be working right through that. And a good filled out one is actually music to my ears as a realtor.
Absolutely. And then to jump off of the point of what the other one is here in the Minnesota area is a seller's alternative disclosure. And what that's used for is typically foreclosures, even though lots of those banks still have one that's similar to that, or short sales, and also estates. And essentially, it's a short version of the full foreclosure, and it's just or foreclosure disclosure. But essentially, what it is it's look. The page one is typically they mark you are, as a buyer, waiving your right to the traditional 12-pager. Because they don't live there, they've never lived there, so they don't know anything about the property. So the questions on there would be, again, have you had a radon test? Do you know of a septic system? Do you know of a well? Has there been methamphetamine production? It's very basic stuff. It's only 4 or 5 pages, and then it has the regular radon disclosure with it. It doesn't mean that it's good or it's bad. I don't care what kind of a disclosure you have, you want to have a home inspection. But also, as a buyer, if you have one, then you love the house, but it's just poorly filled out, you have every right to go back and say, look, I'm not going to sign this until you finish filling it out. Because I'm telling you right now, more often than not, that poor seller honestly didn't fill it out because they didn't know how to answer the question, and they felt too uncomfortable to ask their agent what this means.
Oh, absolutely. And then right what you just left off on, my solution's been if I'm this listing agent and I've got an estate or kids are selling for the parents and they don't know, that's when I suggest getting a pre home selling evaluation. Let's find out. Pay the couple $100 to this gentleman, this organization, let them come in a short period of time and give you an evaluation.
Which is
You
great.
know.
I mean, that's a great idea. So
Mhm.
don't let it, Linda, don't worry about it. It's just part of the process, and just know that you have rights and you can speak up and say, look, I want this filled out better. It's something that happens on a regular basis. So hopefully that kind of clears up a little bit for you of what the disclosures are. Um, do you have any final thoughts?
No, to Linda, if you're not happy with your realtor, and I hope in that instance you do not have a buyer agency contract, but if you do have one and you're not happy with that realtor and you really don't feel you're getting the service you want, my only solution would be to contact a broker in a polite way and just express that you just want a little more attentive service. Get yourself a realtor there that is going to service you better and explain these things. Your realtor should be explaining seller disclosures for each property step by step by step. You're not expected to understand all this stuff. That's our
Yeah.
job.
And by talking to the broker, lots of times it can solve the problem because the agent
You
will
bet.
step up and take care of you because you deserve that. Everybody listening deserves the best possible representation they can have. We just believe in that. So, again, choose your agent carefully. And if you are anywhere other than Pittsburgh or Minneapolis and you're looking for a realtor, we always offer that free service, which we've mentioned before. Give us a call, email us. We will help you for free find a good realtor that will take great care of you in your city and in your area.
Sure will.
If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to email us or call us, and we'll be happy to answer them. And we'll probably pick them like we just did here today to talk about on the podcast. So thank you again for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. So until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful week and keep bringing those questions to us. We really appreciate it.